and Glenn Hurdy just had his arm up for close on an hour, so I'd be rude not to let him ask his question.
So, Glenn, if you unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
We can.
Good. I've got a few questions actually. If you don't, I don't know if you want me to ask all of them. So you mentioned the route changes. I believe that must be reviewed. Looking at the footpath, that footpath leads directly onto the junction, where even with that junction, the changes, you still had a hard left for any large vehicles, which looks to me that's a serious injury waiting to happen. That'd be one of my concerns around the route changes. Not sure if you want to respond to that one first before I go on to the next.
Yes.
And it might be worth you bringing the plan up also, just so I can. So, as you say, your new path that runs from where you've got C runs down into that road, into the road there. So that obviously comes down the bridge. And then if you've got any large vehicles wanting to turn right here, actually having a pedestrian on that, actually, from what I would see, that would not give you enough access if you also had a car trying to come out and turn left or turn right onto the roundabout.
So this is an existing footpath that we connected by cutting back this hedge line.
We didn't get that, Chad, unfortunately.
Sorry, am I back?
Yep.
Yeah, so this is the existing footpath, isn't it, on West End Road? And we were effectively proposing to cut back this hedge to connect to it further up so that we don't reduce the width of this junction.
Yeah, which I fully understand. The current use of the Barn Hotel with minimal traffic, actually understand now with a 72 resident or 72 apartment complex, having delivery vehicles, 70, you'll be getting 7.5 tonners down that road. Actually, I don't think that gives enough protection to pedestrians, and I think that route needs to be reviewed.
I think that so this is covered by our transport consultant, and it's already gone through one round of highway review from the first application. They're obviously going to have another round of reviews with this application. So if there is any road safety audits that are required for that, I'm sure that would be picked up within the consultee responses that we'll come back to.
Sorry, Chad, I don't think everybody got all of that.
I got most of that. What I could say, and I absolutely understand you've got lots of consultants and professionals, it could be worth making a point to go back and actually raise that as a concern, put it on record, just so we can ensure the safety of all our residents.
That's fine. Yeah, I'll preempt that response from highways, and I'll
Okay, brilliant. Have I got? I don't want to take everyone's time with my questions.
If we can move on to somebody else, Glenn, because others have had their hand up.
Absolutely, absolutely. If I get another chance, I've got a few more to ask.
Yep. Peter Slavitt is next up. Welcome, Peter. What's your question?
Peter, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to unmute myself.
Sorry.
And I have to say, even if it upsets people, I find it very difficult to take seriously someone who can't manage a bloody microphone. However, I want to come back to flooding. My house on Pembroke Road and several other houses on Pembroke Road have been flooded 3 times in 10 years. And the reason for that is that the Thames Water surface water sewer is unable to cope with heavy rain. So I'm sure you've done a very good job at making sure your site doesn't flood, but you've also going to inevitably pump more water into that Thames water drain, and it won't cope. It can't cope now, so it's certainly not going to cope afterwards. So there needs to be remedial work done to the sewerage to ensure the capacity increases. Otherwise, the Pembroke Road, the flats, the area around the station are all going to flood even more than they do now. So I need to know what's going to be done about that.
Yeah, sorry, Peter, about
Can't hear you, sorry.
you can hear me now.
We can.
So firstly, apologies for the microphone. It's not a problem I've had before. Yeah, just in terms of what is in our control here, what is in any developer control, it's only what's within their title boundary. We know the problems that Thames Water have and their infrastructure issues across London. What I can say categorically, though, is that we are not increasing surface water flows off this site. Surface water is what falls from the sky on a catchment area. The catchment area stays as it is, and we've proved by the drainage reports that we are slowing the flow of that water into the sewer as compared with the existing condition. So it is an improvement, and it will reduce the pressure on the network. That's a fact. What happens outside of that network is unfortunately not within our control, but still contributions to infrastructure. There are means and ways of funding to provide improvements to local infrastructure. We provide a contribution. How that is spent and implemented is for others to be accountable for.
Are you happy if we move on, Mr. Slavid?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Gay Cromlin is the next on the list. Welcome, Gay.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, I have two questions, one of which is very quick. So the first quick one is you've talked about car parking and bicycle parking, but what about motorbike parking? Because that's another form of transport that's more ecological than cars, and I've seen nothing about that in your thing. My second question is more about what ecosystems are you putting in place? Are you putting any solar panels in, any heat pumps? How is that going to work? Can't hear you again. I think your mic has some kind of a connectivity problem.
I agree with that. Yeah, so there is an element of parking, as you suggest, within our proposals. And secondly, in terms of the sustainability, we show photovoltaic panels on the roofs. So those PV panels will connect to each of the apartments and will effectively supplement the naturally generated electricity that they'll consume.
That's very good to hear.
Sorry, I didn't catch the bit about the motorbikes. You said that there was provision. Did you say how much or what it was?
I'd have to go back to the documents to check the provision.
But there was
there is
motorbike parking.
Yeah, there's provision for external cycle for that.
And something that I think you said in an email that all the car parking spaces have got electric charging points.
Yeah, that's now a building rig requirement. So wherever you've got a car parking space, you have to have access to an electric charging point. And
how about the bike storage? Because with all the e-bikes around now.
That is a good question, actually. There's no requirement for power to be provided to those. But for a number of those bikes, I think you can actually remove the battery to charge it separately to the bike.
They are now making electric motorbikes, so that's something that might be needed to be considered. So if you have motorbike parking, how are you going to stop the delivery scooters using it?
Yeah, well, there'll be enforcement on site through management. So there won't be a concierge based on site, but it'll be monitored in terms of management. So there will be CCTV operation around the site. It's a difficult issue to manage, to be honest with you. You know the problem, and you know the way that these people operate. It's very difficult.
As a serious motorcyclist, I understand that very well. But I think it's important to consider motorcycles because they're so often overlooked in these projects.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Can we
Thank
go
you.
to John Moss?
Oh, thank you, Chair. Basically, what I was interested in, how, when you were planning the development, you came to the number of flats that had wheelchair people, because you've located them in the larger building, which is nearer the high street, which I would have thought would have been more accessible to them. And I don't understand the location, but perhaps if you could explain why you've selected the number of wheelchair rooms and the position they're located in, which is, I believe, the 3-story building, which is further down. Yeah, there's eight. You've selected 8. Can you hear me? Okay.
We can hear you. But we don't hear Chad.
Sorry, I realise the frustration this is causing everybody. It's equally frustrating for me. Assuming you can hear me.
We can, and we can see your screen. Yep.
Great. The entry block is where we've located the disabled units, which is next to the vehicle entrance. And also we've positioned the wheelchair parking spaces as close as possible to that block. Is that clear?
Yeah.
So at one point they were in the railway block, but we then decided to move them all so they were closer to the car parking spaces, which made better sense to us.
Sorry, can you still hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Right. Yeah. What I don't quite understand is, if they park the wheelchair there, how do they get to the building? I mean, I would have thought they would be at a closer location.
So they park their cars in the car park, but they take the wheelchair into their flat, I would presume.
Okay, fair enough. But it still seems, I would have thought it's more difficult to do that than, because if, for instance, if we live near a town centre and I was disabled, if I can get out without getting into a car, I can't park the car anywhere near the town centre. And you're saying the only way out is to use a car.
I can't hear Chad talking, but I can see his mouse is pointing at the pavement.
Yeah, sorry.
So out of that, the block of flats that's like triangle shaped is right next to the car parking spaces, but it's also right next to the ramp to the pavement, which would take you onto the bridge over the railway.
Okay.
They're basically on the high street already, aren't they?
Yeah.
Well, it's a fair. Oh, to me, it's difficult to get out there, but okay, fine.
You had a question about fire-resistant lifts, I think, John.
Yes, I do. The other question I have is, in the 4-story high building, have we considered putting in fire-resistant lifts? I know it's not a particularly high building. However, there's quite a few.
Oh, did we lose John?
I think his internet connection has seized up.
Oh, I can read his question. He said, will we incorporate fire-resistant lifts in the 4-story building?
Yeah, so if you can still hear me.
Yes, we can.
We have submitted a fire strategy document as part of the proposals that you can all read at your leisure. The railway building is 4 stories. It's under 11 meters for the fire regs, but we have decided to sprinkler the entire block, and we are therefore following technical BS 9991. That doesn't actually require firefighting shafts and lifts, but the unique feature of this building, even though it's low height, it has 2 stair cores. So there's actually 2 means of escape. So it's actually, for an apartment block of its height, incredibly safe in terms of fire design compliance.
So no fire safe lifts. Are there lifts?
There are lifts and they are compliant, but they are not firefighting lifts.
Sure. But
Firefighting lifts are larger.
The people who live on the 4th floor of a family house don't have to go up 4 flights of stairs.
Yeah, there are lifts.
That was a question that someone else had. So I think that John sent me 5 questions, but they were all based on wheelchairs and the lift. So Graham, do you want to pick someone else? The next
Yes, Luke Spires is next in the list in front of me. Welcome, Luke.
Thank you very much. Firstly, Chad, thanks for taking the time, being so honest with us, and thanks to Daniel and team for putting this together. At risk of sounding like a caricature of a concerned resident, the heritage area, benches, nice and secluded. I heard you mention CCTV, but what sort of provisions are you thinking for attraction of antisocial behaviour there? Having formerly lived in Ickenham and near a very similar development, those sort of lovely seating areas during the day often take a sort of different character at night.
I presume Chad is unplugging his
Yes.
microphone again.
Just preparing myself for that. If you can hear me.
We
Yeah.
can.
Thanks for your question, Luke. Yes, it is a question that I will be addressing on Friday morning, actually. I've been approached by the Secure by Design officer who is reviewing the current scheme. It's likely that any consent given here would have a Secure by Design condition applied. And for those that don't know, there are different grades of certification required. And that means there are certain elements. It's about the security of the development as a whole, and then it's the security of the dwellings themselves as well. So in that meeting, I will be speaking to the Secure by Design officer, and we will have to come up with a scheme that is acceptable and deliverable under condition. So to be honest with you, Luke, I don't have all of the details of how we're proposing to keep that secure, but what I can tell you is that those measures will be implemented and approved by the police in their capacity as influencing any design for security measures. So yeah, it's definitely a good question and a topic that needs addressing, and will probably be done so through condition. Thank you.
You happy with that, Mr. Spires? Thank you very much. Next up is Marge's iPhone, hopefully with Marge attached. Right, I'm clicking on the ask to unmute. Perhaps she's there. Right, I'm getting no response when I click on the ask to unmute.
Shall we go to someone else and wait for Marge to figure out how to unmute on?
Yes,
I don't see any more hands up. Shall we go back to Glenn for a minute?
yes, why not? Let's give Glenn another innings.
Can you hear me?
We
Yeah,
can now.
Hold on. So yes, so next statement rather than anything, you address the parking issue with the 26 spaces. It really doesn't address the issue. It's still an issue. So what are you going to do? Because it's the local residents that are going to feel that pain.
Sorry, what was the question? I'm not sure what you.
So the question is the discussions around the 26 parking spaces, and it was driven by the council and the planning conditions. It doesn't really address the issue, which is the bigger concern is all those additional cars, because there's going to be more than 26 cars, are going to have to find somewhere to park. So that's still going to spill onto the out roads. So what are they going to do about it? So it's still a question they need to answer, I'm guessing.
So Glenn, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
So I think what you're identifying and what I can definitely empathize with here is that there's a difference between the reality on the ground and the aspirational planning policy of the London plan and the local plan.
Correct.
Everyone wants to move to a car-free society, but the reality is that everybody drives to work, or the majority of people. So there's limited things that can be done, but from a local perspective, one thing that can offer to reduce some of the pressure are car clubs. Car clubs, I don't know if you're familiar, but there are operators such as Zipcar, Enterprise, other operators that park these cars locally. It's a membership scheme. You can short-term hire cars for typical journeys, let's say at a weekend. That is one measure that sometimes is employed within transport policies locally, but it's not something that, from my research, has been uptaken in Hillingdon. I don't know if you or the other people on the call have got any more experience of that. I'm not familiar with many of them in the area. Graham's got his hand up.
Yeah. Out here as the very most outer northwest London borough, things arrive a little later. There are plentiful supply of Zipcar cars in the London Borough of Ealing, but not necessarily just over the borough boundary, say Northolt or Greenford. But certainly by the time we get to West Ealing, they're ubiquitous. It's much the same as hire bikes. Nothing in the north. They do have some in the south to encourage students to get from Brunel up to town centre of Uxbridge. So it's something that will happen, but I've seen no evidence of it in our part of the borough just yet. Could we try Marge's iPhone again, Glenn?
Yeah, fine.
Thank you very much. Right, I'm going to click on ask to unmute. Right, I'm still getting no luck.
She's
Oh,
not there. So should we go to Rob?
Yeah, Rob Dolan.
Evening, everyone. How are we all doing? A couple of small questions for me, just hopefully just quick fire ones. Chad, what's the frame construction for the buildings, out of interest?
Back, it's reinforced concrete we're looking at installing.
So you're going to have a tower crane?
Possibly. Again, that will be part of the construction management plan, exactly how we do that and which contractor we use. And there will be craneage on site, whether that's a mobile crane or.
Yeah, that will pose more challenges with access and egress on the roundabout. Is there 278 works anticipated as part of the scheme?
As it's an existing junction, we don't think there'll be a 278 agreement. It might just be a minor works at that junction, but again, that's something that highways will lead on.
So they'll do a DLAP survey before you start the work of the area.
Yes.
Okay. Are you sure about the 2.5-year program for construction, or is that your overall program from planning to people moving in?
I think the 2.5-year program would probably be a construction program. Again, until we have a contractor that can commit to a contract for that, I can't give you an exact time frame. It could be 3 years.
Okay. So
I'm not committing to that time frame exactly.
But you're not delivering this yourselves. You're not employing the subcontractors yourself. You're employing a contractor to take this on.
That's actually not my decision. So we have a commercial team and a production team that decide that separately on a site-by-site basis.
Do you know when the logistics plan and the traffic management plan will be available to look at? Because I think the whole access and egress and the disruption on that junction is being massively downplayed. I'm not saying that's down to you. I think no one's anticipating how challenging this is going to be. Especially with the school nearby, rugby club, people just going about their daily business. It's busy at that junction anyway, let alone to start building 72 properties in there.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's something that we have to address on a number of planning conditions. So, as I said earlier, the condition, so the reports would only be produced if we gained consent, and it would be produced, obviously, to undertake our works, but also to discharge a condition specifically. I know what has been applied previously for particularly busy junctions are delivery time restrictions. So delivery outside of 7 till 9 a.m. and I don't know.
Yeah, that was going to be the next question about restricted hours, but it sounds as though that's going to be picked up
Yeah.
And
I think
last one,
Yeah. Sorry.
I don't want to overstay my welcome. Sorry, guys. Last one. Have you identified any contaminated land or non-hazardous material on the site?
No, we haven't. Is the honest answer. You'll see from the portal that we submitted a phase 1 desktop study for the site. So we haven't taken boreholes, and we haven't.
Okay.
We lost your sound at the end there, Chad. We
Yeah.
heard you say you've not taken boreholes, but we didn't catch anything after that.
Yeah. How about now?
Yeah, we have you now.
Sorry, this is nearly over. So we've done a phase 1, which is a desktop study. We haven't taken any boreholes and done what's called a phase 2, which is more intrusive, taking samples. But from the previous use of the site, it's been a farm and then a hotel. There haven't been any industrial uses of the site, so we're not expecting any hydrocarbons. There's probably asbestos within those buildings to some degree, given the time that they were built. That, and again, it's very common for remediation to be applied. We would then produce report for and verification at the end.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with the process on it. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So we have Alison and iPhone 88. So whoever speaks first, I think, go first.
I'd just like to come away from how this site will affect human people, like humans. What have you done to address potential harm to bat roosts? You know, we're losing our wildlife, you know, all over the place. Things like swift boxes and anything to help the local wildlife. What are you guys going to do that? Because with all your new buildings, there's no bat roosts, there's no swift colonies or anything like that. So how are you going to address that sort of thing?
We've undertaken a bat roost assessment, and that included monitored surveys over the summer months. There must have been at least 5 or 6 different visits. The findings of that report are within the ecology reports, and that confirms that there are no existing roosts on the site. Okay. To your question about how we're going to provide habitats, well, one answer to that is that we've increased the habitat units on the site to achieve a 10% biodiversity net gain. So the bat roosting opportunities will be determined probably by predominantly the trees that are there, but also it could well be conditioned that we integrate bat and swift roosts within the buildings, which are quite common for the sites that we work on in more rural locations. So I think there are opportunities that are fairly low cost that can significantly improve the number of bat roosts in urban locations.
Yeah, like, you know, hedgehog highways, you know, insect hotels. You know, we need to bring back this biodiversity of our nature. Otherwise, you know, like bees, and we need all of those little things to help us as humans. And I do think sometimes you get so carried away with the human element that we often forget the little critters that actually help feed us. So thank you.
Right, thank you. iPhone 88, maybe.
We have 2 people using iPhones who've put their hands up who haven't unmuted themselves. One belongs to Chloe, and one is just called iPhone 88. So whoever speaks first, you've got the floor.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello, Chloe.
Hello,
What's your
yes.
question?
Hi. Mine was
Chloe's muted herself again. iPhone 88, can we hear you?
Is iPhone 88 ambient background noise?
This is not an Apple advert tonight. Everybody with problems has got an iPhone. Chloe, do you want to unmute yourself again?
Can you hear me now?
We can, yes.
Sorry. Yeah, my question, our house backs directly onto the site. And really, we just see that there's a big green open space on the West End Roads side of the site. And we don't see why the green open space can't be left between our homes and the development and the big blocks of flats and everything that's very imposing on our homes on the West End Road side, where there are no residents to kind of be overlooking and overcrowding.
Chad? We don't hear you, Chad.
Hopefully I'm back now.
We do hear you now.
Yeah, so Chloe, it's a good question, and I just want to go back and share my screen to answer that. So when we went to pre-application, we had a significantly larger railway block that effectively spanned almost from that footpath all the way to the bottom of the embankment. Following the advice on, again, reducing its scale and mass, we significantly reduced it. One of the iterations of the design was it maintaining this position and exposing more green space on this side. But the overriding objective that the urban design officers wanted to achieve was actually this connection through that I described earlier. So unfortunately, I completely understand the point you're making. The priority of the public route and the public benefit that provides in balance was deemed at the time more important to achieve. So that is the rationale for how the design has evolved in that way.
Right. So there's no concern for obviously all the houses that are going to have all balconies looking into their gardens.
There's definitely concern, and like I tried to describe, there are measures that we've taken to avoid a habitable to habitable window overlooking. And if there are concerns with balconies as well, that we can address those during the application, and we can provide screening to those balconies. Although the balconies are outside of the distance requirements in the plan policy, I completely understand the point that there's an ability for people to look to one side, equally as there is an ability for the people in their gardens to look up. So, it works both ways, doesn't it? It would make sense if it was the case for some screening, but localized balconies to avoid that.
Did you have any other questions, Chloe?
No, mine is all concerning that. I don't really think they're necessarily great answers, but obviously there's not much I can do about that. I think there's, a lot of imposing homes on the homes already there. So yeah, I just think the balconies and everything going on, it's just a lot for the people living there. There's a lot of elderly residents there. They're quite concerned about their security. A lot of the elderly neighbours are, because obviously they're living on their own, and actually their homes can be looked into, and it's quite obvious they are on their own. So there's a lot of concern there for them as well.
Yeah, all I can say is that we have designed out.
We can't hear you, Chad, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I'm afraid all I can do is reiterate that we have designed out overlooking in terms of that requirement. And I think, just to answer the point on security, I think the proposals for this site as a whole, I mentioned the influence of the Secure by Design officer, will actually enhance the area and make it more secure. There'll be more natural surveillance of the area rather than an enclosed hotel premises. I hope that goes some way, Chloe. I understand the issues. I apologise for that.
Okay, thank you.
Glenn's asked a question on the chat about 50 minutes ago when you first mentioned Secure by Design. I've heard of Secure by Design because there's stickers on my door lock, but I don't know what it means. He says Secure by Design doesn't guarantee security. This doesn't address the issue. It just allows you to shirk responsibility. Could you describe what your meeting on Friday with Secure by Design is or does? Oh,
Fine.
588 woke up, but we Can't hear Chad.
You still hear me?
We can now.
Yes, it's secure by design.
No, sorry, we've lost you, Chad.
How about now?
We can hear you now, yes.
Yeah. So secure by design is effectively an accredited checklist of design elements, and each tier provides a different type of security. You're absolutely right in saying that it doesn't guarantee security. I don't believe any measure does. But what it does do is try to ensure that areas have design features that make them more secure. So, for instance, within apartment entry blocks, that will be airlocks. So 2 locked doors with access control before you're able to enter a communal lift shaft, lobby, or stair core. In terms of natural surveillance, one of the questions that Luke asked earlier was related to CCTV. CCTV coverage, a plan will be submitted to Secure by Design as part of condition discharge to see if they agree that it picks up and offers a layer of security. All it can do is offer best design solution really to try and reduce the risks of crime. We're not saying that it can eliminate it by any means.
iPhone 88, we have your background noise, so we can hear you. Do you have a question?
Is that me?
It
Can
is.
you hear
We can
me?
hear you. We can.
Okay, sorry. I'm in a Greek taverna.
Okay, well, we can hear you, so you can.
That's the background noise. Again, my garden directly backs onto the largest part of the building, which sees the sort of flank wall of the Barn Hotel currently. And as Chloe Sellers mentioned just before, that I'm going to have balconies which are, from looking as you described it, if I glance my eye to the left, I see a flank wall. If I glance my eye to the left in this proposed development, I'm going to see balconies and people peering down into my garden as well as my neighbours. Why hasn't the consideration been to switch that around so the larger part of the building doesn't affect any of the residents in that way? And secondly, just to add, I don't think the possibly seen how much Willow Grove and Eversley Crescent floods when there is a downpour of rain. My garden literally is on the brink of flooding into my house very, very regularly. Fortunately, I've put in my own drainage, which has sufficed so far, but I can't see with that development there that we will not flood.
Thank you for the question. Again, so there's a couple of elements to that. I think I've covered flooding a couple of times, so I'm not sure if you caught those responses, but there will be in the written responses to guide you to that. I really take your point on overlooking and the balconies. I mean, I've mentioned in the response to Chloe that for particularly vulnerable areas, balconies, it's possible to provide screening one side. To be honest, not something that's within our proposals, but with your feedback, and I'm sure with the responses that you will be submitting as part of your right to do so, you'll be raising the concerns directly with the local planning authority. We would be happy to address those concerns and provide screening now that that's been passionately brought to our attention by yourself. Sorry, I didn't catch your name, but thank you for your question.
Okay.
So we have Alan M with his hand up, and Sue has a question about archaeological digs.
Do you want to take me?
Away, Alan M.
Yep.
What I don't understand from any of that's gone on is there vehicle access or pedestrian access from Shenley Avenue, Eversley Crescent, Willow Grove, through Garden Close into the development, either during construction or afterwards.
Yes, there is access in the permanent condition. I can share the plan to show you.
So traffic will be coming down and saying.
This is Garden Close here, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 car parking spaces. So this is access for 6 car parking spaces.
Is that where they're going to be storing the bins and things like that as well?
The bins will be stored in people's gardens, and on collection day, they'll be brought to this area, which is the refuse collection point for these units. And then we've got other refuse collection points here. That we've got internal bin stores for the apartment blocks.
The bin lorries will be coming down there.
So where will the bin lorries come down there, or will they go enough somewhere else and they cart them around the site to empty them?
The regulations require refuse collection points within 10 meters of a refuse vehicle. So that's where they've been positioned. It's likely that refuse vehicles are going to come in here, turn around within our site or into our site, and then return out. I'm not sure of the collection procedure for Garden Close, but I'm aware that there are Euro bins outside the apartment. So I'm assuming, but I think a refuse vehicle must service these units down this way.
So they're coming down.
Yeah, so it's extra.
They're coming down.
So there will be more vehicles because they're going there in addition to the current residential area.
They'll be coming down Shenley and
They'll come down Eversley Crescent or Shenley Avenue to get there, to get into Garden Close, so that they can then get into your site to do their whatever they need to do. Will the access it? But I mean, how will you prevent? There's limited parking there. There's clearly going to be a fight for parking. So how will you ensure that area there isn't a free for all with people keep on coming down trying to park there, causing general chaos?
From Eversley and Shenley.
Sorry, I can't hear.
So I think Chad was saying that the bin lorries are going to be going down Garden Close to collect from Garden Close anyway. So they would continue down Garden Close into the new development to collect those bins while they are on Garden Close, and that they would do their turning around in the new development. I'm not sure that there's space to turn around on Garden Close already. So that
have to reverse it, but there will be an increase in traffic.
Well, the bin lorry would be there on bin day anyway, wouldn't he? He would collect more bins while he's there.
Is the access to it from Shenley?
Yeah. Well, anyway, I mean that's so there will be access. It will be used for, let's say, collecting the rubbish. There'll be people there parking, and no doubt it's a pedestrian right through and things like that.
Yes.
Yeah. Only because it keeps on saying all the access will be from West End Road, which isn't therefore true.
No,
the construction traffic
West End
from
Road
West
for
End Road.
construction traffic.
Yeah, but I mean, you did also say that would be used both in the temporary and the permanent phase. But there's that access in the permanent phase at the rear of the site.
There is, yes.
And I have to say, I don't think that junction is suitable.
What junction?
We all know that the access to the barn was the original road, and it was all changed over 100 years ago when the Metropolitan line went in and the station was built. And that's that. It's been a very substantive junction like that. I think now is an opportunity. Certainly, putting in the gatehouse, I believe, makes it worse. I'd love to see the tracking diagrams for the vehicles that are going to be using it. I'm sure you're not going to get them around there safely, and they're not going to come out. You can drive over a mini roundabout, but I don't think you should, as is in your plan, direct them to the right-hand side of the circle.
So while Chad fixes his microphone, Alan, at the beginning, I don't know if you saw, we saw 2 CGI pictures of before and after this development, and the entrance road, the road is wider, and the angle is much easier to get around it.
But what I'm saying is that we shouldn't preserve the totally inadequate. that layout there of the junction is over 100 years old.
Right, but they're not preserving it. If you look at the before and after of that junction, it is significantly different. So compare that now. Well, now where the path is inside, it's a very difficult corner to get around. But it's almost like two parallel roads, and in the new picture, it's like a 90-degree turn. It's completely different.
But where is it facing? To the right-hand side of the centre of the junction. If you didn't have the gatehouses there, you could come up with a solution which is much better.
But the pavement is there, that's already there, that's being preserved.
Sorry,
the pathway where there are two people, that path is staying in the same place.
Yes, but I'm saying the vehicles will come out and they are not entering the junction at a logical place. I'm sorry, if you were doing that nowadays as a proper design, not trying to bodge up 100-year-old design, you wouldn't do it like that.
But there's almost nothing in common between the before and after. It is completely different. I don't understand how that isn't an improvement.
The idea of the roundabout is you circulate round, okay? And then the idea is you try and circulate round the centre. Because many roundabouts are much smaller, you have a painted area. You can drive over it. You can, in certain instances, drive across it and even cut out a little bit. Here, you're forcing all traffic out of there, which means to turn right to go nowhere near the centre of the junction.
I think Rob Dolan might have an interesting point to make here, because it's clear from his questions he knows something about civil engineering. Rob, would you care to make a comment?
That's a bit of a stretch, but I would share Alan's concerns. I think the new design is an improvement, but all it's doing is letting one car in and one car out off the pavement. Currently, if you were trying to pull into the Barn Hotel, it'd be very difficult to turn left having come over the bridge, because if there was a car in your way trying to get out, all that's going to do now is make it slightly wider so one car can get in and one car can get out. But you're not fundamentally changing or improving what happens at that junction. That's why I was asking about the 278 works. It would make sense to widen it completely and create a big bell mouth, remove a lot of the hedges so that you've got full visibility coming down the hill, and anyone coming around a roundabout, and you've just got maximum visibility. At the moment, it is a slight improvement, but you're not really changing anything, and you're not changing anything long term.
Can you still hear me?
We can.
Yeah, I absolutely take the point that Rob and Alan are making. If this was a green field or an undeveloped site, the approach to this junction would be different. The fact that it is in use and is a serviced site has defined, if you will, how the proposal has formed. Like I said, highways have been through this junction in the first application and raised no objection. They may come up with different comments on this round. So I absolutely take the point that if you were designing this fresh for a site that wasn't already serviced, you would probably come up with a different proposal. But that's just the history of this site.
To disagree with what's been proposed and the comments made about it. If you put your tracking diagrams in there, it will look awful. You're going to have much bigger vehicles going in here. And as somebody hinted there, yes, I do know something about traffic.
Alan, we will. My written responses are provide the links to the transport report that you can review at your leisure. The provided for the junction.
Thank you.
Can we go to Sue?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Yeah, just somewhere in the paperwork, I saw something about potential archaeological dig. I heard you just mentioned about boring holes, but does something have to happen within the heritage site area? Or how long would that take, and what happens if you find anything of interest? Would that cause a delay?
Yes.
Time scale.
If you can still hear me, it's likely. So archaeological dig will be required. Only today I had one from one of the committees with comment on the archaeological report. Should usually plan out, for those that don't know, a written scheme of investigation is usually submitted, and then once approved, we can then undertake archaeological works. I said that commencement of the site might be within 6 to 9 months. It could well take longer if results of archaeological digs reveal findings of importance that either require further investigation or more excavation. So that's really an unknown, but so you're right, it is an area of interest. There's many archaeological reports on buildings, so yeah, no doubt.
Okay, thank you.
Shall we go to Sue and Dave Brennan? I think that's the last question.
Hi, can you hear me now?
We can.
Lovely, thank you very much indeed for this. Going back to Garden Close and the council lorries going through, obviously it's a private, not private, but it's a private close with private parking, permits only. Chad mentioned about council lorries going through the site to the new site. The actual width of that road in Garden Close is 2 cars wide, one for parked cars. They will never get a council lorry down through Garden Close onto the site. It's not wide enough. And also you mentioned about where their bins are. Their bins are at the entrance, Eversley Crescent end. For that same reason, they can't get lorries down there. So I can't see how any council lorry can actually go down through Garden Close to service the new site. Did you hear all that?
We heard that. It's just that we can't hear Chad.
No, thank you so much.
But I think on Chad's the diagram from over the top, it's difficult to know where Garden Close is and where Eversley Close is because they're not in the picture.
I might have it on the. Do I have the map? Oh yeah, you see Google Map on my screen?
No, we still see your
Let me stop that
picture.
Share another screen. Then we know what we're talking about. Do you see that?
We do see Google Maps now, yes.
Yes. So there's 2 elements to Garden Close. There's the two-way, supposedly two-way, but cars parked in this area. So that would access the rear of the former Barn Hotel. I think what Dave's just said is that refuse vehicles need to collect the bins for
that's
this
right.
element of Garden Close at this corner.
Yes.
So when you go back to our site plan, what I was just trying to say is that the refuse vehicles could possibly do a 3-point turn and use that to reverse into our site as a turning maneuver. I'd have to check the tracking that the transport consultants produced. But in any case, they wouldn't need to go any further than they already do to collect the waste bins.
Chair, can I just say, I'm very happy you explained it better now. You're at the top end where the proper road is, and that's not an issue because that's not an issue. It was only if you actually came into the site proper, you'd have major problems. So fully understand, no issues at all. Thank you.
Okay, well, Ruth Stapleton, come on down.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah.
Perfect. Hi, Chad. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. You can ask.
Okay, cool. So my question for you, there's going to be potential of 72 new residential dwellings. With that is going to bring an increase to the amount of residents coming into the area. So how do you foresee the impact that that's going to have on local amenities such as GPs, dentists, hospitals and schools?
So that's a good question. And I think what you're referring to is financial contributions for those services. So usually attached to a planning consent, certainly for a development of this size, would be a Section 106 agreement, which effectively is a list of planning obligations on the developer. Part of those obligations would be contributions to local services. A number of those are wrapped up in community infrastructure levy charges, which there are standard calculations for. And within the viability document that I mentioned earlier, we have actually listed an estimated quantity and sum for each of those contributions. I've mentioned open space before, but there are other elements, and there are other means to provide contributions for healthcare and education in particular. Is very, very common contribution. So we've made an allowance for that within the viability that we've done when talking about affordable housing. So ultimately, it will be the council side what those exact sums are, and then we will sign up, should we be successful, Section 106 agreement, which binds us to delivering those contributions, and those contributions will be triggered at different stages of the development. So they will be covered. I can't tell you exactly what they will be yet.
Thank you. So I think we'll make the last question because it's now 9 o'clock. We've got Graham Bartram. Can we hear you?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Yeah, sorry. So I have a concern that disabled people will find it hard to get up the bridge, especially in a wheelchair. So access from the development to, say, the underground station is very difficult for people in wheelchairs because of the steepness of the bridge. And I wonder if you've considered the possibility of, as part of your Section 106, actually building the step-free access at Ruislip Station and connecting that directly to your path at the near the railway line, so that people can enter the railway station on both platforms using a lift and a bridge, which would then also make the entire station step-free access for everyone. So it's just a suggestion.
We don't hear you, Chad. I guess you're trying to speak.
Time I attempt this. If you can hear me, so Graham, this was something that we discussed at pre-app, and it feeds into the accessibility comments that I'd made about public access through the site. Obviously, the site is very constrained in terms of topography from the formation of that railway crossing. The best that we could come up with within the site was this footpath, because this is the area of the site that offers the lowest gradient. We did look at options of introducing ramps that effectively cut into this embankment, but they were so ridiculously long to achieve the required gradient that it effectively would have wiped out all of the vegetation on this embankment, which offers two main benefits. One is acoustic protection, and obviously we've spoken about biodiversity and the habitat that's required. Off-site provision is out of our control. It may be that there are wider plans for connectivity that the council have. They've not shared those with us, so we can only assume that any contributions made that are associated with this development could be spent on such a proposal. But as it's outside our boundary, then unfortunately it's outside our control to propose.
It might be worth discussing with TfL.
Thank you.
Well, if we have run out of questions, I'd like to thank everybody that has stuck with us. We're down to 77, which does exceed the best we ever had for a Zoom AGM meeting of Ruislip Residents Association. And by my observation, we've peaked at 126 people logged in, or devices logged in. I would remind you that you have all day tomorrow and Friday to make any objections or comments you would like to make on the London Borough of Hillingdon planning portal about this particular development. and there will be links on the Ruislip Residents Association to the slides you've seen today, the questions you've seen today, and the previous planning documents that were shown at the general meeting back at the beginning of October. I've enjoyed tonight's exploration of democracy. I'd like to thank Chad Neves on behalf of the developer for the time he's invested in this and his level-headed answer of the questions from the residents of Ruislip. It may well be that we have a follow-up conversation with him at some stage, because as you can see, we're probably going to be friends of Chad and his colleagues for a couple of years, should this get planning permission. Thank you all for joining with us. Thank you for supporting the Ruislip Residents Association. And remember, keep your councillors informed of what you think about this development, because there are some good elements here. And it is a lot of work to read through all the documentation, but we can see that Chad and his colleagues have done developments before. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.